The peas and the broad beans are ready to come out of the greenhouse, so it's time to expand the shade house. I'm also going to start a shade garden. I'm Justin Harnish and this is Off My Block. So expanding the shade house is actually quite easy. The bottom frame actually is a shelf support, so I've pre-cut these bits of wood to go right on it. And now it's ready for the seedlings. So the bottom shelf still has enough room for another tray, and I can even put another shelf here and here. Meanwhile, there's a couple of gaps in the garden that I need to fill. So I'm going to be planting these winter crop peas, which are the green fest. They can be planted pretty much any time of the year. These will probably give me some fruit around about the August-September area. So I'm going to plant these now. The structure that I want to get them to climb up is a bought structure. It's not recycled materials yet again, but I've had them for a number of years. These guys here. So I'm just going to put these in and then plant the peas.
The man and I told him I quit, and then I spent my final pay without a thing to show for it. Then when I got hungry and I started to hurt, that's when Lucifer found me and he offered me work, yeah. Well, of course it was an offer too attractive to refuse. I was looking to get a break without paying my dues. Yeah, he offered me music, he offered me gold. All I had to do was everything I was told.
Now the dwarf beans have pretty much done their dash, so I let a couple mature so I can dry them out for seeds for next year. During the wet season, keep an eye out for dead or rotting celery stalks. Pick them out so they don't affect the young healthy stalks and give them a bit more energy to grow. And while I'm doing this, check out what I've been doing with a brand new shade garden. This is the west facing side of the house with lots of tree cover, so it doesn't get a lot of sun. It's a shady place, a perfect place to put a shade garden. There's still quite a bit of rubbish to be cleaned up after the kitchen renovations, and I plan to recycle some of the wood.
The stories that he sang to them were awful and old, man. They woke this ancient fable in the bottom of my soul. I saw an old woman wailing on a little girl, her teeth on the pavement glowing like pearls in the light of a lamp that runs off liquefied petroleum gas from the Holy Land. I quit, and he said, you can't go back once you've chosen the pit, man. I never found a soul who wasn't looking for me. There's one thing I can tell you is you'll never be free, yeah. tired and old. But working for the devil left me wanting my soul. If I could do it all again next time I'd try to refuse. 'Cause working for the devil done give me the blues, yeah.
Apart from the fact that this whole garden needs a good weed, there's one big problem. This guy here, Salarum mauritianum, otherwise known as the tobacco weed or the woolly nightshade or even the flannel weed. Now it may not seem like much at the moment because it's only about a foot high, but these things can grow big. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. These things can grow in excess of 6 foot and just as wide. They're a big problem because at this size they create a stand as such, and they crowd out and shade out other plants, natives, etc. They need to be got rid of. They can create many thousands of seeds which are carried by birds. So how do you deal with this? I mean, this little guy here, which has found himself amongst all the wandering dew that needs to be taken care of, at this size, pretty easy. Just make your way all the way down to the bottom, give it a very soft but firm tug, getting out all the roots. This guy here, no problem. But what about when they get bigger? Let's go and have a look. Right, for these large ones, and they do get bigger, I use a pair of secateurs for something this large. But you may have to get a saw or something similar to get the really thick ones. But this one is not that old, so just cut it down as far as you can, and very, very quickly get some weed killer, herbicide, and just dribble that right on the stump there. Now if you haven't got a saw and you've got a big thick trunk down the bottom, it may be just as easy to go for the nearest branch, click it off, and do the same thing. Just like that. Now I dribbled it straight from the cap of the weed killer, but I know that all around it is nothing but weeds, so everything will be alright. But if you've got some sensitive plants around, just get a paintbrush, a small art paintbrush, and paint it on. But give it a week or so and hopefully it'll all be gone. Well, that's about it for this episode. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, remember, keep calm and garden on. Just because you don't believe something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. When you're face to face with a world you've only ever read about, adventure elevates to a whole new level. Detective Robert Kingley is thrown headfirst into a life he knows nothing about by a woman who thinks she does. There's not silver jumpsuits and flying cars in the future, but desperation and the hunt for euphoria. When the reality of the universe guides the world, it can only lead to a chaotic end, if not for a handful of souls and one man who realizes that he is different to the rest. If you think the universe is trying to tell you something, you're probably right. This is what King has discovered in this, the first part of a thrilling trilogy. The stories are true, and we have dismissed them as myth. We may have forgotten the gods, but they haven't forgotten us, and it's time for a little reminder.